although in some ways it feels like this class is just started. With only an 8-week class period, we need to start thinking about the final paper almost from the beginning. And the first step in writing the final paper will be developing an annotated bibliography. This will be due 2 weeks from this Saturday, April 11th, so it will be due April 25th. And it will be on the topic you choose for your final paper. The requirements for the final paper are that you develop a 5 to 7 page academic research-based paper on a single work of art or archaeological site that was made within the time period covered by this class. That is from 1400 CE to 1900 CE. We can't be more recent than the beginning of the 20th century, and we shouldn't be older than the late Middle Ages. If you've never written an annotated bibliography before, these are quite a common developmental assignment. Lots of teachers in many disciplines assign them to help develop your research and to have a kind of check-in point before you've gotten to the point of actually writing a paper or an essay. And what an annotated bibliography is a bibliography or list of sources with additional information added in about each of those sources that's designed to give your readers some information about the sources, what they're about, and how you might envision using them in the paper. So to do this, there are several steps. So the first thing you need to do is to read the texts. In general, if you had a physical book, I don't expect you to have read the whole thing in the next 2 weeks. However, because libraries aren't open, I expect most people will be doing most of their work online, and so we'll primarily have journal articles. I expect that you can read 6 journal articles in the next 2 weeks. If you do use a source like Met Publications where you find an entire online book, try to read a chapter or 2 that seems most relevant to what you're going to talk about in your final paper, and skim through at least some of the rest of the text. Once we've done that, we want to create a write-up for each article or piece of text that we've read. And I want you to do 2 things. I want you to summarize what was this book or article about in about 2 to 3 sentences. And then I also want you to evaluate this. How does it fit with what you're planning to write about? How does it rate as a scholarly source? How useful or not useful do you think it's going to be in developing a final paper? Third, we're going to write everything up. So each of your sources should be cited in Chicago Manual of Style. I'm not grading this assignment specifically on Chicago Manual of Style, but this is a good opportunity to practice and to see if you have any questions about using Chicago style. I know this is a new citation style for many people. We will talk about Chicago Manual of Style in another video later on in the class, so if you have specific questions that come up, you can email me, and I may also add that question to the later video. Before you turn everything in 2 weeks, you also want to double check. There's a requirement that you have at least 6 sources. This does not include your textbook. You are welcome to use your textbook in your final paper. However, I know what's included there, and you should also know what's included there. We shouldn't need a summary of that. This says, do you have more than 2 internet sources? This was obviously written in a time before COVID. For this semester and this semester only, I am removing that, so just feel free to ignore that question. I suspect that probably all 6 of your sources are going to come from the internet. The biggest thing is to make sure that they are academic and scholarly sources. And then last but not least, make sure each of your sources has a bibliographic entry and an annotation. So if you've never seen an annotated bibliography before, this is what one entry off of an annotated bibliography will look like. This example uses a textbook that's similar to yours, but not the exact book we use for this class. So it starts out with the bibliographic entry for a book. So we start with the author's name, Kleiner, Fred S., a period, the title of the book in italics. So Gardner's Art Through the Ages, A Global History, Volume 2 is the whole title of the book. If this were a journal article, we would have the title of the article first in quotation marks, and then the title of the journal second in italics. And then for a book, we have the place of publication, which is Boston, the publisher, Thomson Wadsworth, and the publication year, 2017. Again, for journal articles, we would probably have a volume number and an issue number, rather than a place of publication and a publisher, but it should look similar to this example. Underneath that, we have a paragraph of information describing the text, and it's doing this two-part summary and evaluation that I mentioned on the previous slide. So if we look at the first couple of sentences, the book is an art historical overview covering the time period from approximately 1200 CE to the late 20th century. Each chapter presents major works of art from a specific time period or region. The book is broken into 18 chapters, most of which cover roughly 100-year time periods. So I've got 3 sentences of summary there that tells me what is in this book, what kinds of topics does it cover, what kind of time period does it cover. My second 3 sentences are evaluative. So this book will be a useful source of general background information as well as a guide to mainstream scholarly thinking for my topic. The general tone of the book is scholarly but not overly technical. And it also contains a number of useful reference charts and diagrams. So again, this is very brief, it's just 3 sentences, but it gives my reader information about how I'm planning to use this book in writing my final paper. So I'm going to use it as a guide to what most people think about this topic. It tells the reader how scholarly or how technical I think it is. And then last but not least, it mentions one piece of information that I plan to specifically use in my paper. So in this case, I would probably use one of the charts or diagrams as the most prominent or most important piece of information from this source in my paper. So you're going to use this example and you're going to have 6 entries exactly like this. You're also, for this assignment, going to have a research question. I'll discuss writing a research question more in videos for next week's class, but the annotated bibliography takes a little bit longer to assemble and it's more writing, so I wanted to talk to you about this first. If you have any questions, as always, please email me. Otherwise, as soon as you know what you want to write your final paper on, please let me know that as well.